Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome. I am Ahmad Furkhan, and for this midterm evaluation, I am going to walk you through everything which I have learned and covered in CS 5610. But instead of listing topics which I have learned, I want to show you uh, what I have learned in one fun current coherent system, which I have made in a PPT. Um, let's share you my screen. That screen, okay. This is my screen. Minimize and design slideshow. So this is the web architecture like I have made uh, to make a screen visible to all of you. Minimize this one. Okay. So think of a web application like a city. There is a front door, that's our browser, our HTML, CSS, and JS will be working in the browser as a front door, and there is a highway, that's a HTTP protocol that moves the data between your browser and the server, and there is a processing plant that our Node and Express backend system where requests get routed, validated, and turned into responses. And there is a vault, that's our database, like a relational or a non-relational, which are both used in our project. Like we have earlier, I have used a MongoDB, which is a non-relational database where data lives permanently. Every single thing we have done this semester lives somewhere in this map. The one piece that I think is the most interesting is the highway itself and what happens when JavaScript try to use it, like rendering the data in the front door and the processing of the plant in the backend and storing in the vault. Like this is the main thing which is interesting to control all the system, which I have felt. And coming to the like breadth of the system of the architecture, there are particularly four layers like presentation layer, HTTP layer, and the application layer and persistence layer. Coming to the presentation layer, starting at front, HTML gives the browser a document, which is a document object model tree of elements the user sees and interact with. And CSS controls layout. We use Flexbox and Grid to organize that tree visually. JavaScript makes it dynamic, dynamic attaching event listeners, updating content without a page reload. We came up with a React framework, which it's an abstraction on top of this. Instead of manually updating the DOM, we describe what it should look like given some state, and React handles the difference like UI. And coming to the next layer, which is the network layer, HTTP highway. Every request is a fresh and stateless conversation. When now, like the moment a user does something that needs data, like submitting a form, loading a feed in the browser, needs to talk to a server. It does it over a HTTP, which is a stateless. So every request which is sent is a new conversation. Here, the verb matters, like get, post, put, and delete. Like get means the read data or give me the resource, and post is like create or here is the data, here is the new data, and put is update. update this record, and remove. Delete is for the remove this record. And these are the anatomy of the request which I will be using in my like code review, live code. And coming to the third layer, which is the application layer. On the other side, we saw there was a highway, which is a server. We used Node.js, which is just a JavaScript running outside the browser, and Express on top of it handles the routing. When a request comes in, it comes in the Express, matches the URL and verb handler function, but before it gets there, it passes through the middleware function, which then logs the request and parse the JSON body, check if the user is authenticated, and either pass control forward with next function, and short circuit and send any error back. And coming to the fourth layer, finally the handler usually needs to read or write data that persists beyond the request. We use two database paradigm, SQL, where data lives in structured table with strict schema, and we query with join statement, and and the MongoDB and NoSQL document structure, where each record is flexible JSON like object. ORM like Mongoose gives a JS object that map cleanly to database document. You call like .save function, and it handles the query. Like queries like in MySQL are by select join, and and the queries are like find Ahmad, like that. And the problem a JavaScript has one thread is like, why async at all? Like JavaScript is a single threaded. There is exactly one call stack. It's one call stack, one thing running at a time. If you call a database or a remote API synchronously, the entire browser freezes freezes where no scrolling, no button clicks, and nothing. That is obviously unacceptable where single calls stack one thing at a time anyway total freezes. Like so, JavaScript has another mechanism to handle this waiting without blocking, like asynchronous non-blocking, which uses a event loop. Like here's the model. You have a call stack where your code runs. You have a web API browser level features like set timeout, fetch, and DOM event that live outside the JS engine. And you have a call stack queue, a waiting room for functions that are ready to run once the call stack is empty. When call when a call fetch, JS hands it off to a web API layer and immediately moves on the network request. It happens in background. When a response arrives, a callback is placed in a queue. The event loop watches both. Is the stack is empty? Is there is something in a queue? If both is true, it pulls the callback onto the stack and runs it. That's the whole model of the event loop. And coming to the promises and async and wait. The callback based versions of this were the callback based versions of this was ugly, deeply nested callbacks. like hard to read, where promises comes it in a picture, like cleaned it up. A promise is an object representing a value that will exist eventually. It is one of the three states like pending like waiting, fulfilled, got a value, or rejected, something went wrong, like error occurred. You chain by dot then functions like for success, and for errors like dot catch. And a sync and wait await is just a synthetic sugar over promises, where async before a function and inside it you can write await before any process promise. The function the function pauses the function pauses at a line without blocking the thread until the promise resolve, then continues with a callback with a value. It looks synchronously, read clearly, and handles the error with a normal try catch error. And this is what you will see in virtually every real project. And coming to the chief analogy, a single threaded doesn't mean slow, it means short delegation. Like here here's how I think about the event loop. Imagine you are a chef, one pair and of a hand. You imagine you are a chef, like one pair of hand can only do one thing at a time, but incredibly fast when focused. Like you can't stir the soup and chop the vegetables at the same time, but you can put the soup on the stove, walk away, prep the vegetable, and come back when the timer goes off. You didn't clone yourself, like you just delegated the waiting time. So that exactly what fetches does. JavaScript puts the request on the stove, the web API layer comes back to call stack, does the other work, and the response is ready. The event loop on taps it like a timer, and it's on, and it's on, and it's like, hey, the soup is done. Like the meanwhile other task. And let's do our coding part, I'll which I am going to fetch user from the public API and render them into a DOM with no framework, just vanilla JS. Like, let's start. So Windows MD MDMKDR make directory demo fetch API cd demo fetch API. System cannot find the path specified. Yeah. Mm, CD. DOWNL download. What the hell is happening? This is the already I have made. This is the index HTML which I have like the same doc type HTML, and then the user like title like fetch demo, body, and users like a loading. When the button is clicked on click function, the load user. So the app.js async function. It is async function where let's redo it. Full system. HTML. Dot HTML dot JS. Let's first make type. There should be a shortcut. It's not putting here. Index.html. There is some delay. It's taking too long. Now it came. Title, timer, and let's make a body type H1 header user button with a on click function and click equals load users. Load users with a function. We'll make this a function where, okay, this is load user button and click. Okay, and click button where UL with the ID of user list. Script script I will be using app.js. App.js script. Okay. The HTML is complete and coming to the app.js part. I will be making so this is the HTML which I have made like title fetch simple with a header like user and following with a app.js. Like I will make a sync function, a sync reference function, sync function load user by loading the users, by loading the user and const by making the constant container to get the document get element by ID which is user list. User list. Next container inner hashtag generic by loading. Okay. And then this by a try constant dot response should if there is no response, fetching the no response. There is no response dot okay. But getting the response like it is about constant. Midterm function with this. Um, Estimation. So this is the whole function I have written. So let walk you through this one. I have marked a function by a load user, which I can await inside, which I can use await inside. The first await hands off the network like a code here and checks the response is okay and wait and fetch. If doesn't fetches, then it will be a response error like status, and then the const user like await response.json will be a second await parsing the JSON body is also async where where it will be mapped by a turn array into a HTML string and then join by a function here. Then join into a one string. Then if any error is been displayed, it will catch. This one. So here, load is it's no showing.